Tax Services Committee to order. Our first meeting, January 26th. I would, done one, entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Yesterday afternoon.
Jean? Matt? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Action Jackson, you're on.
Okay. All right, first is a resolution, to approve the list of chargebacks / refunds. You all have a copy of that. The first page consists of, the first 5 are New York State school re-levies by the collectors that shouldn't have been re-levied because the county actually collects the state of New York property, not the town, and so they got re-levied on. The next page is like pilot agreements, just the county portion, so they're pretty straightforward.
The one on, Crime Pavilion, City of Glens Falls. What happened there? Do you have any background on that one or not?
Which one, Peter?
It is, City of Glens Falls, 2016.
Oh, on the second page,
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. I'm not really sure, cause I
Okay.
don't really handle anything with pilots. They flow through the treasurer's office, and that's where this list of chargebacks come from. But it's just it's a pilot, they're in a pilot agreement, so this is the county's portion. So they don't pay like regular taxes, it's a payment in lieu of taxes. So that's why we have to do the chargeback.
I think this is a new one. We're getting started.
I see. This particular,
Let the record show that John Straw is late.
There's one up there for you, yes.
Up here, John.
Peter, did you have any other questions?
no, that'll do it, thank you.
Okay.
Bart, you have something?
Matt,
Oh, Matt.
you'll have to forgive me because I'm not familiar with the chargebacks and all that, but can you tell me who you charge and?
Because what happens is that this is the county portion. In a pilot, there is also something for town and something for school, but, it's just the way, it's to equal out the books, right, on the pilot?
What happens is that
It's all the
this is
treasure.
an accounting procedure, basically. The money has already changed hands. We're just, we call it a chargeback because we're going back to somebody to get that money back. Because we've already done it.
Okay.
The warrant's already been balanced out. These are basically for mistakes or for problems, assessment grievances or so forth like that.
Okay.
But usually it's a mistake somewhere in the line and we already corrected it, but we just need this to balance, make sure that the balance of the books works. Resolution in the back so that it was okay to be approved.
Okay. Great.
Any others? Yes.
The R/S3.
Roll section 3, which is state-owned land.
Okay.
So all of state-owned, well, I shouldn't say all, the majority of state-owned land is in roll section 3. There's nothing but state-owned land in roll section 3.
Anybody else? Any questions? I'll entertain a motion to move this. Very good, Claudia. Ron? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried.
Okay, next is down under pending items. At my last meeting, which was in November, we had discussed setting up a meeting with DEC to discuss some of the contaminated properties, being the property in Hague, Johnsburg, and Queensberry. Myself, Mike Swan, the treasurer, and Martin Offerdew, the ex-county attorney, whatever you want to call him, I'm not sure now. We all did attend the meeting up in Warrensburg at the DEC. I just thought I'd review over some of my notes from the meeting. The property in the town of Hague, which is 25.01-1-8, we shared our Phase 2 site assessment with the 2 men that we met with was David Mount Pleasant and Russell Hike. So they reviewed them. Dave Mount Pleasant, handles more of that type of stuff that was on that one, cause it was an old landfill / garbage dump. So he, felt that it really was only garbage on the site, and that, this is gonna sound crazy to you, but garbage was nothing more than garbage. There's nothing in New York State, according to Mr. Mount Pleasant, that says that you cannot bury garbage on your own property. So we kinda reviewed that with him. He stated that we could request for DEC to go out and inspect the property, at no cost to the county. So on December 10th, which was the next day, I sent a letter to Mr. Mount Pleasant requesting that of DEC, and they did go out on the 6th, of January and inspect the site. And he really doesn't feel that there was any, real issues with the property. So Mike and I have reviewed, it a little bit further, and we really feel that we could probably put this one back in the auction. They did have a concern being that, I have it here, a letter somewhere that he sent us, that if we do sell this one, we do need to make it aware that this was a dump, and we should list some further information, and I'm finding my letter. And there's some information that we should include in the deed. I have passed that information on to the, Amy Bartlett and the county attorneys, and asked her to put it in the folder so that, the new attorney would have that information available. So if we do move forward, I mean, I would like him to review the information first, of course, but it's a little too late for it to go through this year's auction. It wouldn't be until 17's auction, to get that included. But the state didn't really feel that it was contamination that we needed to be worried about on the Hague parcel, that is.
How many acres was that, Alex?
I have that here.
4 or 5, no, 8 maybe.
3.04 acres. It's assessed for 18,900.
Does it have a survey?
I don't believe so.
No. It's
Okay.
pretty accurate for guessing.
Well, I'm going by the parcel status sheet. I'd really have to see what the tax map says. I don't have a copy of the map on that particular parcel with me.
Sorry. Good job. So you actually got a letter back from the DEC that's in the file?
I do. I
Okay.
thought I brought it with me, but I must have it on my desk still and not grabbed it. But yes, they, he did send me a letter. Actually, no, it's right here. I do have a letter if anybody would like to review it. I can gladly scan it in and email it to any of you if you'd like to see it. And it is, you know, just him stating, basically, there does not appear to be significant environmental impacts attributed to the landfill. He said there was 2 springs that he did see located in a general down gradient direction from the landfill, and on the southerly side of County Route 21, did not exhibit any evidence of impacts. Based on the above stated findings, the department has not observed any significant environmental impacts associated with this landfill that would necessitate further investigation or remediation at this time. He does talk about this, New York Code Rules and Regs, Part 360-1.11, subsection B, subsection 2, which he did attach. And again, like I said, I forwarded all this on to the, county attorney's office, so it would be in the records. That was just, that part of the codes, rules, and regs is what he's saying that we may wanna consider including that type of information in the deed when we do convey this property.
Great, good job.
Okay. Then, we can move on to the Johnsburg parcel. Russell Hike was the one who we dealt with more for Johnsburg as well as the Queensberry parcel. This one, there was a little more information out there. Russ let us...
Is this a gas station right in downtown Johnsburg?
It's, the old
Yeah.
Mosier property, that
Yeah.
old gas station
Yeah,
garage.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Plymouth Motor dealership back in the 30s, and it's been there forever. Gas
Yep.
station, or garage.
Okay.
Right. Russ let us know that the governor has funded $100 million dollars for the 2016 budget year for the ERP, which is the Environmental Restoration Program. However, they are not accepting any applications at this time until all of the old jobs are completed. He believed that the state would do a press release to let us know, or let it be known, when the filing of applications could start. He was thinking probably more towards June or July that could possibly happen. However, under the ERP, the county would choose the final use of the property at the time of the application. That is, if they choose to do this. This program, again, is like a 90-20, or a 90-10, I mean, 90% the state cost, 10% to the municipality or the county. Zoning wouldn't have anything to do with determining the use. It would come down to us at the time we would fill out the application, and you have to set that use ahead of time when you file the application. You can't wait until the cleanup is done and then determine the use. Because the use, or the final use, is what determines how much cleanup they actually do to the property. If it's industrial or commercial, it's not as strict of a cleanup as it would be for residential. Residential would be more in-depth. They would want to make sure they got the water to a drinkable water level. The brownfield, he wanted to let us know, is still available. However, the brownfield would have to be done by a developer. The county couldn't be a participant in that brownfield. So if there was somebody out there that was interested in purchasing this property after the fact and they wanted to develop it, they could go forward with a brownfield project. However, we could not, according to Mr. Hike. He said that DEC would entertain going on the property to inspect things and to see what it is or what it was leaking. However, if they do this, they would have to put an environmental lien on the property. So I know that Martin had stated that we would need to prepare something for the courts to give the state the rights to enter the property, to check it or clean it, if we chose to go down that path. They also said that there would be no liability release given if they went on and did the cleanup of the property. So, I don't know, my recommendation, I think, would probably be to wait more to the June or July timeframe and entertain the ERP. But that's just my recommendation. Again, I do have all the phases for these that we have from Clark Patterson Lee. If any of you would want to review any of that stuff, I do have copies of them in my office. Mike also has them in his office.
Just to give you an update, there are buried tanks on the property, 3, I believe, one large one, a couple small ones. There is visible signs of contamination, oil type stuff on the property. The boring samples that they did show that there were petroleum-based contaminants around the outside of the building. Nothing was done inside the building, and there are open drains in the building because the building is not safe to enter to do the type of work that they need to do. So that's where we're at.
Alex, I would put a little file and put a little note in your tickler file and contact Russell in June or July.
Right.
'Cause
Another
if
thing,
we're
though,
eligible
that
for this
the state did
funding.
request, after reviewing these phase 1s and phase 2s, was they would like to see if we could get a water ground sampling of the Johnsburg property as well as the Mullins property. Again, they weren't concerned on the Hague property to do that. And it is something that I've reached out to Clark Patterson Lee to get a quote from them to see about possibly getting those groundwater samplings. It's looking though like, I think, because we have one for the Warrensburg one, and it looks like it was in about an $8,000, a little over $8,000 range to do that, because they gotta bore in and do some wells to get the groundwater. So There is money in the reserve fund that we could, but again, I don't have the quotes as of right now to, give you that information. I could possibly, if I get that information before next month's meeting, bring it back, and we could maybe entertain moving, some of the funds from the environmental testing fund over, so that we could have Clark Patterson Lee do those groundwater samples. The state seems to think that that might make a difference in what it would come down to for cleanup purposes.
There's not much value to this property. It's small.
Right.
It's definitely in a commercial type area. Why don't you contact me in June, Alexi? I'd like to talk to the DEC about this
Okay.
program and see what our options are.
Okay. I just brought up the water sampling because that was something that DEC recommended.
Right.
Yeah, $8,000 though, that seems like fairly significant just to do that. Can we reach out to a couple other companies?
That is
We're
a
under an
possibility.
engineering contract to DPW, so that's what we've been doing, is going with Clark Patterson Lee. We can,
We could entertain putting it out in an RFP.
but it's just not drilling holes, okay? I
Right,
mean,
there's
it's-
more to it.
Yeah.
But I think it behooves us to at least check to see if that's the most cost-effective way, and if they are the most, and if they're the best, firm to do it. I understand we have a contract with them, but personally, I'm a firm believer in the more people who get an opportunity to bid on something, the better it is for the county taxpayer. So I'd support that, but I wouldn't support just going to one, just Clark Patterson Lee.
Kevin, did you have something
Yeah,
else?
we've done this before, we did 2 properties in Warrensburg, we've been through the procedure of cleaning them up. And, you do bid out the well cost, and that, when they do bring up the samples, they have to have it tested on site. So it is expensive to do that, but we did that with a old car wash, gas station type thing.
Who'd you use, Kevin?
I can't remember at the time, but, we've been through this process, that's what
Yeah.
the question was.
I'm not questioning the process, I'm just questioning whether we can get it a little more cost effective.
All they do is drill the wells and bring up the core samples and they test it for
It's not
petroleum products.
rocket
Not
science.
rocket science,
Right.
you're right. But that was my question, it's phase 2, so we have the phase 2 report, it says that it's contaminated.
It says there's petroleum-based contaminants in the soil, yeah.
So then it kinda throws it back into our lap, what we wanna do.
Yeah. One thing I do wanna say is that when we met with DEC, I think we've established a great line of communication between us and them. And the result of that is the Hague property, which we've been dealing with for 15 years, all of a sudden they've said, no, don't worry about it, you're good. Okay, so
He was the one that did our
so I mean,
properties.
and now, and they were literally ecstatic when we walked in there and plumped down all of these phase 1 and phase 2 tests, because they said, most people that come in say, oh, we got a problem, take care of it. And we
They
came
don't
in and
have
said,
it.
look, we've got the information, we know what we're talking about, let's go ahead and do something, and that's when they opened up about all kinds of stuff. I mean, so and another property, I don't know whether you were gonna talk about it, Lexi, but on Trout Lake Road in Bolton, we've got concerns there. We called them on the phone, we talked to them, went, looked at it, we got their information, looks like there's no problem. So I mean, we've got a great working relationship right now with these guys. This turned into I'm just ecstatic about it after dealing with this stuff for 20 years.
Great. Let's keep it up. Claudia, did you have something you want to say?
Sorry, I have a thing in my mouth. You said this was a commercial property. Is there any interest in someone else buying this?
There's not much in
No.
this.
There's a great amount of outstanding taxes. That's why we're really involved.
Right.
But we don't wanna foreclose on something that's contaminated, and have that tagged to the county. So that's how we ended up getting involved in this to begin with.
There's over $95,000 in outstanding taxes. The property, if you went to sell it at auction, we could probably get maybe 50 for it, if you're willing.
Doug?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, one other thought, obviously 8,000 for this one piece, but if we've got 2 or 3 other pieces that are gonna need the same, evaluation done, I would recommend that we we bundle them together when we do our RFP and we put it out because, you know, $20,000 or $25,000, I think we'd get a lot more play than, okay, so to me, that, from a business standpoint, that makes a lot more sense than just piecemealing one or two here and just going to one person. So that's what I would support, something along those lines, but.
Alex, do you have anything on Queensberry parking?
I do.
Who's afraid of that?
Okay, Mr. Hike, he didn't really have a lot to say. He didn't, feel that Queensberry, I don't think, was as bad as people thought it was.
He wasn't, he said that, what they found at the Queensbury site, which, for those of you who are not familiar, it's the, big brick
Mullen?
building right next to the CR Barn on Bay Road, okay? He wasn't very concerned with it.
No, he said that he didn't feel it looked bad, and he would be willing to meet with the county, the town, and possibly a business or a developer that may be interested, and sit down and he would really explain things out better that way, instead of really getting into an in-depth, but he really didn't feel that it was as bad as the reports made it out to be.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ron.
on this piece of property, I went to C.R. Barr, the general manager, a couple of years ago, and asked them if C.R. Barr had any kind of an interest in that parcel. I mean, it's next door to their manufacturing facility, and he said, well, you know, it's got hazardous waste material in it, or there's something wrong with it. And I said, well, what if we got that taken care of? And he said, well, come back to me when you do. So, I mean, this happens to be a pretty nice piece of property that has some sales value. I think the downside is, how much did Mullen owe on this in taxes?
Almost 200,000.
So there you go. So, I mean, it may be a 4 or 5 acre parcel.
No, it's not even that.
No, it's only
Acre and a half.
1.09.
1.09, but, you know, it's 200,000 is owed on it.
Yeah, $204,385.14
You know,
was the last
in
I
order
had.
to do something, you probably have to knock the building down to make it worthwhile for C.R. Barr, but anyway,
Well, that's an avenue to keep open when we, try to figure out where we're gonna go with it. Do you have any more, Alex?
About a meeting and she wasn't interested.
Oh, yeah, we talked, I'm sorry, I talked to John Stroud about this briefly one day, and then I called C.R. Bard and talked to the people over there, and I got the same information that you did. They're not interested in being the developer to do the cleanup under the brownfield, but they would be interested if we got the property all cleaned up and the building down and looking nice, they'd be interested.
what do we have it appraised at or assessed at?
I don't know.
I'm not sure which figure this is, cause it's coming from their office, so I don't think this is the current reval assessment. So prior to that, it was $131,500, because the treasurer's office, when it comes to assessments, is a year behind.
I mean, that's the building that's on the property, but, I mean.
That's the total assessment,
Right.
so
What we're
I'm
looking
sure
at,
it's
the value
larger
is
than that, I would think.
1.5
Maybe
acres
less.
on Bay Road.
Because the building is basically at the end of its life.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you been in it, Mike?
Yes,
No.
very briefly.
I have pictures, if anybody wants to see the inside of it, it's just, you're more than welcome to flip through here, it's really just a lot of, kinda, there's a couple pages, that page before too, shows the outside of the building, some of the inside. On the front cover, they have some of the inside as well.
I think Queensbury has spent some money boarding it up because.
They got about a $15,000 lien against it for boarding the property up.
There was homeless people trying to get in there.
It does,
Kevin,
one of the
did you have
walls,
something you wanted-
Yeah, my question was, what did the phase 2 report say on the building?
The building, they would not enter the building to do their testing because it was unsafe.
they found one of the walls. They did
Unsafe
testing on the
structurally.
outside, on the ground.
Unsafe structurally, not because of like hazardous waste
Correct.
Correct.
emanating out of the building.
Correct.
So what did they tell us about the property on the outside?
They found some areas of mild, very mild petroleum-based contaminants, not very deep, basically on the surface, and the
height?
Height, said that it was minimal
Minimal.
from what he saw from the
He
phase two.
really, said that it was that high.
He didn't even feel that it needed to have any water testing done on it. So basically, his recommendation was wait till the program becomes available, file an application, and then it's a 90-10, or no, 95-5 or
90-10.
90-10 cleanup.
Yeah, those are easy to get out, 10%.
So the estate for the Mullins is bankrupt? I mean, there's no way of gaining anything out of that?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I've talked to Mrs. Mullen on
We
numerous
own these
occasions,
already, or no?
but they feel that what's owed in taxes is way beyond what the property's
Temporary
worth,
instance of
so.
ownership.
Okay, yeah,
Say
Ron?
that again?
We have temporary incidents of ownership, we do not
Okay.
have title.
Okay.
So, we did that so that we could go on and have the properties inspected, but we did not wanna take
right,
title.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah, back on the, the Hague parcel,
Mhm.
the 90-10 program that, you referred to,
They
we still.
didn't feel we would need to do cleanup on the Hague parcel.
Not the Hague.
The Johnsburg parcel?
The Johnsburg parcel,
Okay.
excuse me. If we're going to do some testing, it would seem to me you would want to do the testing so that you could get a better picture of what the scope of the cleanup was going to
That's
be.
correct, that's why they asked for that water sampling,
So-
especially for Johnsburg.
But you also might wanna do soils testing to find out where and how deep and whatever,
We've already
so
done
that,
that.
you've already done that.
They've done some,
Yeah,
they've
that's
done
what the
some
phase
of
two
that.
did.
Okay.
Yep.
So, whatever we do, it would seem to me it would be to try to define the scope so that we, would have an idea of what we're gonna apply for,
Right.
come June, right?
See, what we did was, we kind of broke the phase two into two sections, because the water sampling part of it is so expensive. We decided, okay, let's just do the preliminary and the soil sampling, which is reasonably inexpensive, and get that done and see where we are. And then go to the DEC and say, okay, here's the results, what do you think we should do? And that's what they said is, Johnsburg, I think you need to do the water sampling and stuff. In Queensbury, you don't have to. So, that's where we're at. We saved ourselves some money by waiting, basically, on the water part of it.
John?
Is the 90-10 program, is that part of the ERP?
That's the ERP, that's the 90-10. Mhm.
Okay, so we won't know anything about that.
Until it becomes available for us to apply. He was hoping June or July, he couldn't give us a definite date, because like he said, the state didn't want any new applications until all the old work was finished.
So if we were successful in getting 90-10, that would clean up the site, level the building, take out all the garbage and, make it developable and give it a
Yeah.
stamp of approval?
Yeah, to the level that we request. In other words, if we request a commercial level or an industrial, that's not quite as much of a cleanup as taking it to a residential. Okay, so we would have to make the determination at the application point as to how clean we want the property, basically. And with that parcel in Johnsburg and the one in Queensbury, if we do that one, I mean, that would be commercial.
Right.
I mean, those two sites will never be residential, which is gonna be a cheaper cleanup than having to go to a residential.
Craig?
Okay, but as the environmental girl sitting at the table,
Well, then
you know,
we-
maybe we have some responsibility to
Yeah,
clean
not
it up
again.
more than the bare minimum, sorry, John.
Then we would be able to sell it,
Yes.
We could then foreclose
put it out in the
and,
market?
correct.
Okay. All right, I'm done.
I'm done.
Craig?
Yeah, I wasn't gonna bring this up, go ahead.
The 10%, then, that comes out of where in the budget?
It would come out of the environmental testing fund that we have set aside.
Just to let you know about that, because
Yep.
we have some new people in the
New
room.
people.
4 years ago, when I came in as treasurer, I asked the board, and they honored me with doing it. I said, let's set up an environmental testing fund so that we can do what we're doing right now. Because previously in my life as a real property director, I've been battling for over 20 years, trying to do something with several of these properties. What we're doing is we're taking, when we have our tax sale, we take money out of the proceeds from that, and we put it into this environmental testing fund, so that we have money to do these things. That way the taxpayer isn't funding this. It's coming out of the tax sale properties. And don't quote me on this, but I think right now we have a balance of about $180,000 in there.
Thank you.
Called the Mike Swan Fund. Gene?
I don't wanna go back to the Hague, but this is rattling in my brain here.
Sure.
This is not the same property we talked about in October or
It is.
November. Didn't they do
We
some digging?
we reviewed all these testings, the phase twos, back at the either October or November meeting.
But didn't they do some digging there and found, cars and trucks or something?
Not
there?
cars and trucks,
Oh,
no,
not
there
metal?
was some metal and some
What they
glass,
did, they found what you would find in a
residual
landfill
ash.
that was
But
closed.
it wasn't just garbage, it was,
But the New York State DEC feels that that is just garbage, the metal and the the glass.
Easy, Gene.
They
You have
said
to
there was
understand, though.
residual ash because they felt that garbage was burned on the premises.
So it is the same property we
It is
talked
the
about.
same property.
But you gotta understand, there's not a lot of stuff in there like you see now, because that was closed in the mid-sixties. So the majority of what you're finding when they're digging up is glass and metal. Right. There really isn't
Leftover.
anything else, and ash, from when they burned the garbage off of the top and then pushed the dirt over. So I mean, there's no plastics in there, there's none of, the styrofoam and all that stuff that you find in a landfill now, because it didn't exist in this, up until the sixties, when that was closed.
Lex, you have anything else?
I do. I actually wanted to, I don't have it on here, but I wanted to review, the Warrensburg, Horicon Ave property. We did get some information back, from Clark Patterson Lee. I'm going to ask you to take one of these and, pass them on. I don't know if I have enough for all of you. It's what they sent us about, cost estimates for a phase two. For a phase two. And if you look on that sheet, it is broken down, by preliminary assessment and site characterization. And this will kind of help you with what we were talking about on the other properties. We've always in the past just opted into doing the preliminary assessment after they had come up with the work plan. So they did a phase one, then they came up with a work plan for phase two, and then, this is what the work plan shows, costs for the preliminary phase two site assessment and also a site characterization. The site characterization, is where they would do the well sampling and, okay, sure. Is where they would do that well sampling. We've always in the past, waited on that because we wanted to see what the phase two site assessment would actually show. So, I do have a resolution here that I would really like to ask to, move that $8,810 over from the environmental testing fund, to be able to move forward with the phase two site assessment. Not the site characterization, just the preliminary part of the assessment, so that we could gather more information on this property, to be able to move forward with the cleanup.
Before I ask a question, does somebody wanna move that for Lex? Matt? Ron? Give us a brief rundown of what this is.
Sure. They said that, this site had 2 recognized environmental conditions identified. There is concern with the site having residual petroleum contamination as a result of a past history of ground or above ground tanks. There is also concern regarding the interior of the building having miscellaneous oil storage and poor housekeeping conditions. They have an open floor drain in there. I'm thinking here, I probably have pictures I could show you of the inside. I'm sure they included them in this report, and, it shows, the floor looks very oily, but there's probably about 2, 4, 6, 8, maybe 10, and then a 55-gallon drum also in there. But this is an old oil distributor, correct?
Old fuel oil.
So, I can pass this down if you want to look at it.
How big is the parcel?
That one, I don't have, unless they've got it here, I didn't print out a card on that one, it's not that big, it's actually small. They had two other lots that we've actually already sold next door that were vacant. Do you know how big that corner lot is? Not that
No, but
big.
that property would sell in a heartbeat.
Right.
I guess that was my question.
It's always been interested in that.
We've had, yeah, I've had calls on that parcel.
But I don't have the exact acreage right here in front of me. I did not bring a copy of
It's
the
under
card
an
with
acre.
me. It's under an acre, I would think.
ACOL, Dennis Beecher Baker had a above ground tank there.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
I don't think there's last contamination.
yeah.
I
Good-
don't
good spot.
either. They say that they would like to, do some surface sampling along with 3 test pits to an estimated depth of 6 feet to be, completed in the former tank location. They wanna check and inventory the containers that are inside. The floor drains would be flushed to determine, a connection to the public sewer available to the site, 'cause they're not sure where those drains go that are in the floor, if they go to the public sewer or not. And then they also are, the task 4 would be, once the preliminary field investigation is completed and any laboratory sampling results obtained, they would do the report. That's all that task 4 is to come up with the final report on all their findings.
What is the 15.7 at the bottom there, what's that?
Oh, that number is for, again, like I said, the site characterizations, which would include the, well samplings and the borings, so that would give us probably groundwater. So actually I was wrong, I gave you the 8,000 figure from the preliminary assessment. So they're saying, Clark Patterson Lee is saying for the groundwater sampling and any of the well samplings, it would be $15,730 for this Warrensburg property. So it may be more for that Johnsburg one, depending on the property. I mean, this one's pretty clear property. Johnsburg has more obstruction, there's growth on there, and a lot more contamination.
Well, you're talking $25,000,
For,
these two.
yes, but I'm only looking to do the preliminary assessment right now, which would be the $8,810. I'm not looking to do the water sampling yet. I'd like to see first what the results come back on the, just the testing of the ground and the waste inventory and stuff in the drain to see how contaminated it really is, to see if we really need to do the water sampling there.
I understand that. Kevin?
Go by this every day. This place isn't contaminated. I mean, I would go through with it, but I would bid both, like Doug suggested, I would get a well driller or an environmental test person to go bid on both properties, drilling the test holes. I don't believe you're gonna find anything on this property.
What,
If you find any surface spill, it'll be on the, just on the surface where they had a above ground tank, and then they built this building.
so why don't we go back to the resolution and, alter it to not to exceed 8,810 and request that we go out to bid with this one and,
That's a separate resolution, the RFP. I could draft up a separate resolution if you want and bring it up to Amanda, if you want to put it out there for an RFP to include a water sampling of this property
I wasn't
and
concerned-
Johnsburg.
I wasn't concerned about the water sampling, I was more concerned about bidding this out with the Johnsburg one.
For the, well, the
But-
only thing that we need on the Johnsburg is the water sampling. We've had the preliminary assessment, all that is done for Johnsburg. All that was asked of us now by DEC was to get a groundwater sampling. That site characterization that's on here for the $15,730, that's basically what that is the wells and the water sampling, which I wasn't asking to do anything with that right now in Warrensburg, unless that's what you're requesting, is that we do something with that. I only wanted to do the 8,810 resolution to get that money over to do the phase 2 site assessment, like we've done on all of our other properties, to gather more information before we move forward with the water.
thought Kevin just asked that we put it out to bid.
The phase 2, you wanna
Oh, absolutely. I mean, why wait? Every time you have an environmental company, mobilize, you're gonna pay more money, just get it done. I mean, very minimal cost, if you can put those properties out and sell them, you're much better off getting it done.
Mhm.
And I'm telling you right now, this site here, you probably earn some money, there's a lot of people who want to buy that for storage, garage storage.
Okay, so you're saying put an RFP out to do a phase 2 site assessment on Warrensburg, and then a water sampling or site characterization, I guess, on Johnsburg as well as Warrensburg?
No.
Yeah, I would, I'd do it all at once, it's gonna be the same company gonna do the test.
That's what I'm saying, I'm just looking for clarity, so I know
Yeah, me too.
here, 'cause I feel like I'm getting two different things, Dennis is
Well,
saying
it's not
no.
gonna be-
Well, you are sort of, we're talking apples and oranges here. The
Right.
Johnsburg property, I'm gonna tell you, I don't think there's any value to that property.
Right.
No offense, Craig. It's in an area, half the buildings are bordered up there.
But it still needs to be cleaned up so
Still
that
gotta
we
be
can get it
cleaned.
back on the tax roll.
Okay.
And the only way to do that is we gotta.
Well,
continue
then
with
let's do that. Let's go out for an RFP for the water sampling on Johnsburg and the soil sampling on Warrensburg.
And the,
And
The
for, what about the phase 2, that we need for Warrensburg?
Yeah, get that RFP.
That's gonna be by an RFP as well?
That's what you just said.
Is it?
Starting to sound like my wife. I guess so. I thought that depending on what they found in phase 1 would determine whether or not you actually wanted to do phase 2.
Well, that's just it. We have the Warrensburg phase 1 done, and then we went and we requested them to come up with, from my meeting in the past, we moved forward to have Clark Patterson Lee come up with the phase 2 work plan. That's what they did, and then that's where they're coming up with the estimate of the $8,810. So we've already had them do the work plan for the phase 2, and now, if I'm gathering the right information, you're telling me we don't want them to do the phase 2. We wanna put it out for an RFP to have other people give us a work plan at a cost. Our work plan cost us $2,000 to get the work plan done for the phase 2, which we've already paid them for.
Yeah, but if you go out to an engineering company, they're gonna take your work plan. It's your work plan, you paid for it.
Correct?
They're gonna take your work plan
Mhm.
and give you a price to continue on with that.
Okay.
So you wanna send it out and make them honest.
Exactly.
Okay.
Everybody,
Oh, yeah,
So we're talking about like $30,000.
We don't know.
25,000 for Warrensburg and whatever Johnsburg is.
But we don't know, 'cause we're gonna put it out for an RFP to
Right.
see what
Right.
other people
Well, we
say.
don't know what the
But-
value is, and again, we don't know whether we're gonna do both. I think that should be part of the RFP.
right.
If you come back with a clean bill of slate on phase 2 without doing the water sampling, then why would you do that,
Mr. Chairman,
Craig?
so to get this whole process straight, we have Clark Patterson Lee under a general service agreement or something with the county, correct?
Through
So
DPW.
already they've gone through a vetting process so that we're getting a good price, we could assume, right?
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't
how
assume too much.
safe assumption is that?
Not very.
They're contracted through DPW.
Okay.
I do not have a direct contract with them. In the past, I think that was just chose because DPW already had the contract with them. I've never done an RFP for any of this, and I don't believe Mr. Swan did prior to me. So I think they've just always gone with them because they were the engineer that was on contract with DPW.
Okay. So, we have a motion on the floor for the site, the preliminary assessment for the 8,810, correct?
Correct,
That's something that Clark Patterson and Lee would carry out.
correct.
Okay.
Could carry on.
We,
Could carry out. Above and beyond that is the site characterization that we're also talking about for the Warrensburg property and for the Johnsburg property. Is that something that Clark Patterson Lee also carries out and does, or is that for somebody else?
they're asking to put an RFP out to
Okay.
find, get other people to bid in on it to see who we would end up choosing to do that work.
Okay,
The RFP is a request for proposal.
yep. Okay, so if we just voted on the motion on the floor right now, that part of the phase two, the preliminary assessment could be taken care of by Clark Patterson Lee.
I would almost like to withdraw that if we're gonna put this out to an RFP. Because I don't know if we're gonna come up with the same amount of money.
Guys, can I just interject, because I've cleaned up 2 properties through the brownfield. We did 2 properties. This is their estimate. You need to get I'm surprised that Clark Patterson Lee, it sounds to me like they didn't do the phase 2 environmental study like we asked them to do.
We didn't ask them to.
We have-
Why wouldn't we? I mean, that was the whole purpose of the.
Because we just got phase one done.
We just got phase
Now
one
we're-
done, and we have them do a phase 2 work plan, which they have to do before they actually do the phase 2 assessment.
And basically Lexi's asking for the money to be moved now from the environmental reserve into her funds,
To do the
contractual,
phase
so that we can go ahead and do this.
You paid for another phase 1.
No, I only paid for phase 1.
You paid for another phase 1.
Correct, because they did not feel what you provided, the committee, everybody agreed that what was provided by Warrensburg and our prior county attorney recommended we move forward and have another phase 1 done, correct?
It's fine. To me, it's a waste of money. So now we're asking to go and do the second step is have a phase 2. Wow. No wonder why we're broke. Okay, that's fine.
That is what we have done with all of these properties.
Well,
And
there's
Clark
no-
Patterson Lee has.
Excuse me, I don't wanna argue and I don't wanna debate this, but I paid for a phase 1 study on the Warrensburg property because I was thinking about buying it, by an engineer who gave me a book like that, said, if you wanna go further with it, you need to do a study on it. If they didn't think that was good enough, that's fine with me. All I'm saying is, you should pay for the money, get the properties looked at so you know what to do with them, once and for all, and package it up, and it should go cheaper. And these are preliminary estimates by Clark Patterson Lee. This does not
Correct.
mean that these bids are gonna come in at this price, correct?
Correct.
Wow.
Now you totally lost me. Why aren't we putting them out for RFPs?
I think we should.
Okay.
Why is that off the table? That's not off the
It's
table,
not, that's
right?
not what I was asking to remove from the table. I was asking to remove the resolution request
Right.
to move the $8,810.
Got
That's
it.
all I was
Okay,
asking
we're
to
there.
remove from the table, because you guys put it out there. And I just wanted to remove that, because we do not know that that's what the cost is gonna be if we put this
So
out
you
for
need a
phase 2.
resolution to proceed to put out an RFP, is that what you want now?
If that's what I need to move forward with an RFP, a resolution telling me I can, then sure, that's what I'll put out there.
I made the motion, I'll remove my motion if the second wants to as well, I forget the
Okay.
second.
Okay,
I
so
agree.
that's done.
We're done.
Okay. Let's, just have a motion, from the committee, with a second to, request Alexi to, prepare these for RFP and send them out. That'd be Doug, and that would be Matt. Any further discussion? Everybody know what we're gonna do?
Just a comment that I would hope within the RFP that the testing be done in a way that, I mean, you test and then sometimes you need to answer the question, is the issue migrating? So it's not necessarily just one test, it could be some tests might lead you to more tests, is my point.
Or
So-
they may lead to not needing
Right,
this, yeah.
so I would hope that, what we would be looking for is the consultant to provide us a work program and a cost, which would take us to where Kevin wants to be, which is, where we would act or not act, depending upon what's in front of us.
That's what we've been doing.
Okay. Are you going through Julie?
All RFPs have to go through Julie.
Right, okay. Phew. I feel better. So is everybody all set?
So to be clear then, this is for the Warrensburg Phase 2 site assessment, preliminary assessment, site characterization, and then site characterization for Johnsburg.
Correct.
Right. Separate. You got that, Don? I don't want you messing it up in the paper tomorrow. Oh, no, Don't listen to him.
Well, we don't have any articles in the paper anymore.
Okay.
Now we can.
We ready for the question? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Wait.
Opposed?
I don't know about that, I need mine. I thought I had something else on there, I just wanted to review with you the properties for the auction, that didn't sell. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were trying to close the meeting, I'm sorry,
No.
go ahead.
Don't panic. Are these the ones that, landlocked and subdivision leftovers and,
Yes, this was, no, these were,
weren't you working with the neighbors, trying to get the neighbors, suck them into buying them?
that was stuff from last year that did not sell. These are parcels from this past auction in October. And there was a total of 6 parcels. And the second bidders opted out as well. So, there is parcels that'll be going back into the auction for this coming year. 4, well, they're all in Queensberry. 4 of them also have, I believe, 3 other neighboring properties that, were all owned by the same people as these 4, that are gonna go, and those 3 have residents on them. So there'll be the 3 with the residents, and then 4 vacant land parcels, all neighboring each other. So I think that if it goes back this year, it probably will have a good chance at selling, seeing how they could, tag possibly vacant land with the residential land. The original bidder had thought that he had a backer to help him financially pay for this, and they were also a bidder on one of the other parcels, and they, found out that when they got back, they didn't have that backing, so they didn't have the money to pay off. Offered them to the second bidders, and neither of them wanted them. There was one other parcel that was over on Mud Pond. The girl that bid on the property, who was the successful bidder, thought she was actually bidding on the neighboring house instead of this house. And then the second bidder chose not to accept, so these will all be back in the auction for next year.
Okay. Anything further?
That's it.
I will close the real property tax services. I just wanna have a short comment on invasive species. I'd like to welcome the new members, invasive species. One of the first things I would like to do is, I'd like to change the name of the committee, from invasive species to, Warren County Committee for Environmental Concerns. As you know, of those of you that were on the committee, we, started with invasive species, aquatic invasive species, and we moved on and picked up, a year or so ago, terrestrials. And they're both aquatic plants and animals, and terrestrials, plants and animals. Also, under environmental concerns would be road salt. I know all of you are aware that almost every town, if not all of them in Warren County, are working on programs to reduce road salt. We've had a lot of seminars, we've had a lot of DPW guys attending them. It is on the move, and we should really keep track of it. On top of that, the only other environmental issues are sewer. We have Queensberry doing some sewer projects. The Lake George's sewer project is in the final throes of demise. And finally, this committee will at some point in time talk about the county's monetary involvement in some of these programs. Those are heated, interesting discussions. So that's where we are. We probably meet 6 or 8 times this year, and those will be the issues we have. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to call me. Any one of you, any time, any reasonable time. Does anybody have any questions, comments, deletions, omissions?
Say that name again?
I wrote it down. Warren County Committee for Environmental Concerns. If you got a better idea, just let me know.
Well, we don't need to say Warren County.
No.
Environmental Concerns Committee,
Okay.
ECC.
What about environmental
That's what we
quality
need more
committee?
acronyms, John.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Committee on the Environment.
Yeah.
Okay, we've run over time, so I entertain a motion to, Matt? Second? John, thank you very much, we're done. Thank you, girls. Paul, thank you.
Through that one, huh?
It might,
Ask me to repeat it.
That was the shortest committee meeting.